Last year was an absolute disaster for rental car companies because you see, last summer in 2021, there was a perfect storm of events that led to an unprecedented rental car shortage. And this rental car shortage was caused by a handful of different things. Number one is during the pandemic, rental car companies sold off a lot of their fleet. This in turn decreased the amount of rental cars that were available throughout the entire country and the entire world. Number two is the semiconductor chip shortage. As many of you know, and as we've discussed on this channel before, there is a worldwide semiconductor chip shortage, and because of this shortage, manufacturers are not able to manufacture vehicles at the same rate in which they once were. And because of this, even though travel started to tick up in 2021 and rental car companies were ready to replenish their fleet, they simply weren't able to because there was no cars available to buy. And number three is the floodgates opened up for travel. Summer of 2021 was the first time many people could travel in over a year, and they were definitely seizing that opportunity. So people were traveling throughout the country, throughout the world, and of course, whenever you go out of town, you need a rental car. The surge of travel paired with the decrease in rental car inventory created the rental car apocalypse that we experienced for most of 2021 and even into 2022. And this rental car apocalypse led to extremely expensive rental cars. In some places, people were simply renting U-Hauls or moving trucks instead of renting traditional rental cars. In other instances, people had to wait in rental car lines for hours on end. And in some other more extreme cases, people would have their rental cars canceled with just a moment's notice, essentially ruining their entire vacation. But let's face it, this rental car shortage wasn't entirely bad. In fact, for some people and in some cases, this made it extremely lucrative. Because while rental car companies were struggling to keep up with demand, peer-to-peer car sharing platforms were beginning to see an absolute surge in business. Because as people couldn't get a rental with a traditional rental car, they ended up going with these more non-traditional platforms like Avail, HireCar, GetAround, and of course Turo. Because of this, if you hosted on any one of these platforms last year and into 2022, you probably saw a huge increase in demand, a huge increase in rental trip price, and thus a huge increase in profit as well. But of course, this was a year ago. This was in summer of 2021. And as we sit here today in summer of 2022, we have to ask the question of, are we still in a rental car apocalypse? And what does the current state of the rental car industry look like? Well, according to Greg Scott, a spokesman for the American Car Rental Association, he said in a statement that the supply chain problems have not resolved themselves. There are some instances where the supply of new cars has improved, but it's not back to where it needs to be and won't be for a long time. This was in response to the question of what does the car inventory situation look like for rental car companies. And we of course know that this is true, and we talk about this a lot on this channel. Car inventory and car manufacturing is far from normal, and we are a long ways away from getting back to where we were pre-pandemic. So it of course makes sense that car rental agencies are still having trouble getting their hands on new cars. And of course, the fact that we have pre-pandemic demand, but we don't have pre-pandemic inventory has in turn caused rental car prices to continue to stay high, even into 2022. In 2019, which is the last pre-pandemic year, the average rental car in the United States cost $51 per day. This summer, the average cost of a rental car costs $96 per day. And a recent analysis reported by Bloomberg shows that this exact same thing rings true throughout the entire world. For example, in Spain, prices have jumped from $23 per day to $72 per day. In the UK, rental prices have increased from $37 to $83, and in Canada, the prices have more than tripled. So whenever we look at the rental car agencies, not only has supply made it difficult to find a rental car, but the prices have made it difficult to afford it, even if you can find a rental car that's available. But the interesting thing at play here is the question of, are prices actually because of a decrease in supply? Is it truly supply and demand at play here, or is it a little bit of corporate greed? And there is quite a bit of evidence to suggest that these high prices are not simply just due to supply and demand and inflation, and that corporate greed probably is playing a role. According to the same Bloomberg analysis that I mentioned a moment ago, Avis is expected to earn almost $2 billion of net income in 2022, which is more more than it made in the years of 2010 to 2019 combined. You can also see a chart here showing how prices have increased by country, and you can also see that as fleet size has decreased for rental car companies, the profit of those same fleets have actually increased. So rental car agencies seem to be taking a page right out of the vehicle manufacturer's playbook, and that is the comment that I made in a video last week about the car prices and what's happening to car dealerships. And in that video, I had mentioned that a number of different vehicle manufacturers, including Daimler, including BMW, GM, and more, have stated that they will be intentionally keeping inventory low in order to keep prices high. And the reality is that rental car companies, at least to an extent, are doing this exact same thing. Because you can see that while their profits are going through the roof, their operating expenses are actually decreasing because their fleet size is decreasing. Now, whether these price increases that we've seen from rental cars are due to inflation, supply and demand, or simply a tactic in order to increase profits, or all three, that's something that is up for debate. If you ask a rental car executive or a rental car agency representative, they will swear up and down that the price increases are due solely to inflation and supply and demand. But if you ask others, they firmly believe that these price increases are due to the fact that corporations want to increase their profit while decreasing their overhead. In fact, Representative Katie Porter in the last few months sent out a letter to rental car executives asking for more transparency regarding supply, demand, and pricing issues in the rental car industry, alluding to the fact that these price increases are not because of supply and demand, but instead are because of greed. But to be honest, these price increases and the reasons behind these price increases isn't super relevant to the average Turo host, because at the end of the day, the question of this video is, are we still experiencing a rental car shortage? And how does that rental car shortage affect car sharing hosts? And to be honest, I believe that the answer is yes, but I don't think that the same rental car shortage we experienced last year is what we're experiencing today. There is definitely a short supply of rental cars available, and this is definitely due to the fact that rental car agencies decreased their fleet 2 years ago, and they've never been able to replenish them to pre-pandemic levels. But the other factor at play here is just simply the exorbitant cost of renting a car. Even if you can find a car in 2022, there is a good chance that that car is going to be out of your budget. Rental cars are simply significantly more expensive than they once were, and that is definitely going to impact the average car renter. And this new rental car apocalypse is something that will absolutely help car sharing hosts throughout the entire country. By providing renters with a car that is accessible and also affordable, you are opening yourself up to all of those people that want to go to a rental car agency, but they simply aren't able to. And it's forcing customers that probably never would have given car sharing the time of day into choosing car sharing because it's the only option. And I can say from experience with my own 16-car Turo fleet located here in Dallas-Fort Worth that this is absolutely something that's happening. Over the last year, I've experienced more older renters, so meaning renters that probably would have never felt comfortable renting in the peer-to-peer space, but now are having to do it because it's the only option. I'm finding more and more first-time renters, and I'm also having more people that travel to Dallas for work on a consistent basis, and they consistently choose my cars because they know they're available and they're affordable. So to answer the question of this video, is there a rental car shortage? I think the answer to that is a resounding yes, but I think that there are a lot of different factors at play here, and I don't think it's quite as simple as it was in 2021. In 2021, it was simply a supply and demand issue, but in 2022, I think it's an issue with inflation, an issue with supply and demand, as well as an issue with fleet owners intentionally keeping their fleets undersupplied in order to keep prices high. And this is creating the perfect storm for Turo hosts and car sharing hosts around the country and around the entire world to make money off of this shortage because people need cars and you can provide them. But with that being said, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it. So make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.